You are sitting in a house that smells like dinner from 3 days ago and unpaid electricity bills. Not because your family doesn't work. They do. Your father leaves before you wake up. Your mother comes home after dark. Together they pull in maybe 55,000 a year. And somehow, every single month, it disappears. Not on luxury. Not on waste. It just disappears into the machine, rent, utilities, groceries, the car that needs fixing, the medical bill from 8 months ago that's still sitting on the counter. You've watched this your entire life. And here's the part nobody talks about. You decided it wasn't going to be you. You made the decision. You said the words, maybe out loud, maybe just in your head, this stops with me. But decisions don't change systems. And the system you were born into has been running longer than you've been alive. Your world has a specific texture to it. You know which grocery store has the cheaper chicken. You know the exact date the rent is due and the 3 days of anxiety that come before it. You've heard your parents argue about money in that low, exhausted way, not screaming, just tired. The kind of argument that doesn't have a solution, just an ending. Where someone goes quiet and the house holds it. You went to public school. You did okay. Teachers liked you. You were told the same thing every kid in your neighborhood was told: work hard, stay out of trouble, get a degree or a trade, and things will work out. So you believed it. You held up your end of the deal. You graduated. Got a job. Started making more than your parents did at your age. More in raw numbers, anyway. You opened a savings account. You built a small cushion. You told yourself you were ahead. But something kept nagging at you. The people you went to school with, the ones who grew up differently, were accelerating in a way you couldn't explain. Same graduation year. Similar degrees. And somehow the distance between your life and theirs kept widening. You were working harder. Being more responsible. Saving more carefully. And still falling behind. You thought it was effort. You thought it was luck. You thought maybe you were missing something small, a better job, a promotion, a smarter investment. It wasn't any of those things. Here is what nobody in your house ever told you, not because they were hiding it, but because they didn't know it either. There are 2 separate economies operating in this country. Simultaneously. Right now. In the same cities, sometimes the same zip codes, definitely the same tax system. The first economy runs on time. You trade hours for dollars. You show up, you perform, you get paid. Your body and your attention are the inventory. This economy is stable, predictable, and quietly designed to keep you producing. It doesn't punish you. It just caps you. There is a ceiling built into the structure, and the ceiling is your time. You only have so many hours. Which means you only have so much income. Which means the math never compounds, it just repeats. The second economy runs on ownership. Assets producing income. Money working while you sleep. Equity growing without your presence. This economy doesn't care how hard you work. It rewards what you hold, not what you do. Your parents live entirely in the first economy. Their parents did too. Everyone on your block does. It's the only economy that ever felt real to you, because it's the only one you ever saw. The people pulling ahead of you? They were introduced to the second economy early. At the dinner table. In casual conversations you were never in the room for. They absorbed the mechanics of it before they were old enough to invest in it. That's the gap. Not effort. Not intelligence. Not even opportunity. Exposure. You were never shown the machine. They were shown the machine and handed a manual. This is level 1. And almost everyone you grew up with is still here. Level 1 looks exactly like responsibility. You have income. You budget carefully. You save what's left. You avoid bad debt. You do everything the advice columns tell you to do. But your savings sit flat. $1,000 saved is still $1,000 a year later, minus inflation, which means it's actually worth less. You're running in place and calling it progress because at least you're not going backward. The mindset at level 1 is survival shaped. Not weak. Not ignorant. survival shaped. When you grow up watching every financial mistake ripple through an entire household, your brain learns to protect, not expand. Risk feels like recklessness because you've seen what recklessness costs people who have no cushion to absorb it. These aren't character flaws. They are rational adaptations to a real environment. But they become the trap when the environment shifts and the adaptations don't. The exit from level 1 is not a bigger paycheck. It's a different model of how money actually works. And that model starts with one uncomfortable question: what do you own that works when you don't? You start reading. Not motivation. Not mindset. Mechanics. How compound interest actually behaves over 20 years versus 10. What an index fund is and why it exists. Why your landlord is building wealth while you pay rent, not because renting is stupid, but because ownership compounds and renting doesn't. Why some people borrow money strategically to acquire assets, end up wealthier than people who save conservatively. And it's not a scam, it's leverage. You start noticing language you never noticed before. The way certain people talk about their portfolio like it's a separate entity working on their behalf. The way they discuss tax strategy as if it's a design problem, not a bill. The way they think about time not as hours in a workday but as the single most valuable input in any compounding equation. You realize something that lands cold and quiet. Everything you were taught about money was about managing what you had. None of it was about building something that grows without you. Level 2 begins with an act of discomfort. You take a portion of your savings, not everything, not money you can't lose, but a real amount that makes your stomach slightly tight, and you put it somewhere that isn't a savings account. Maybe the market. Maybe a skill that increases your earning floor. Maybe the early infrastructure of something you're building on the side. You don't know if it will work. That uncertainty is the entire point. At level 2, you're not just earning. You're building. Slowly. Messily. With less capital than feels sufficient, and more doubt than feels manageable. You make real mistakes. An investment that drops. A course that doesn't deliver. A side project that takes 8 months and earns $400. These losses feel personal when you come from a background where every dollar had a specific job assigned to it. But you stay in the game. And that decision, to stay after the loss instead of treating the loss as confirmation that you were wrong to try, is the actual variable that separates people who change their financial trajectory from people who work just as hard and don't. Here's the part no one prepares you for. The people around you, the people you love, will not understand what you're doing. And their confusion will come out sideways. Why are you putting money in the market when the market can crash? Why are you spending Saturday on that thing instead of picking up an extra shift? Why do you keep reading about business when you already have a job? They're not wrong in their world. They're applying first economy logic to second economy decisions. And you can't fully explain the gap yet because you're still moving through it yourself. This is the loneliest stretch. Not the financial difficulty, the social weight. The subtle implication that you're getting too big for the room. That you're forgetting where you came from. That money is making you different in ways that feel like distance. You're not better than where you came from. But you are becoming someone different from who you were. And in a place where sameness felt like loyalty, different feels like abandonment. This is where most people stop. Not because they fail. Because the weight of the room becomes heavier than the pull of the future. Level 3 arrives quietly. There's no announcement. No obvious moment. You just notice one day that your decisions have changed shape. You're no longer optimizing for how things feel right now. You're building for what things become over time. You have assets working. Small ones. A brokerage account that you don't touch. A skill set that commands higher rates than it did 2 years ago. Maybe the beginning of something that earns without requiring your constant presence. You understand leverage now, not as a concept but as a felt reality. That the output of one person working has a hard ceiling. That every person who has ever built real, lasting financial change has done it by creating things that multiply their input. Time leverage. Capital leverage. Network leverage. Systems that scale beyond what any individual can produce manually. You are no longer just a worker in the first economy. You are building a presence in the second. And the difference in how you see things now versus 3 years ago is not incremental. It's structural. You're looking at the same world through a completely different frame. Here is the truth that reframes everything. Poverty is not primarily an income problem. It is a model problem. It is a specific set of assumptions about how the world works, assumptions that are completely rational given the environment that produced them, that make low income feel permanent even when income rises. It's the belief that money is something that happens to you, not something you architect. It's a relationship with time where the future is uncertain, so the present is what matters. It's a risk tolerance calibrated to environments where failure has no floor. These are not moral failures. They are adaptive responses to real conditions. But they transfer. Parent to child. Not through conversation, through atmosphere. Through watching. Through the unspoken lesson of every financial decision made inside a house over 18 years. The first person to escape poverty in a family doesn't just earn more. They update the model. They carry different assumptions into every decision. And then, this is the part that matters most, they build an environment where the next generation absorbs the updated model the same way they absorbed the original one. Without lectures. Without pressure. Just through proximity to different thinking. That is the actual inheritance. Not the account balance. The mental model passed down. At the higher levels, and you're beginning to see the shape of them, the game looks almost unrecognizable from where you started. People operating here don't talk about savings rates or side hustles. They talk about entities and structures. Trusts that hold assets across generations. Tax strategies built with accountants and estate attorneys, not apps. Investment access that doesn't come from a brokerage website, it comes from being in rooms where deals happen before they're public. The currency at this level is not money. It is access. Access to information before it's available. Access to people who control structures. Access to decisions that shape the first economy from the outside. You are not there yet. But you can see the architecture now. And just being able to see it, understanding that it exists, understanding how it connects, changes how you move through every level below it. Pull back further. Past the strategy. Past the numbers. What you are actually doing is interrupting a loop. Not just your family's loop. A generational pattern shaped by labor markets, credit systems, housing policy, and educational access, systems that produce predictable outcomes, which shape predictable beliefs, which produce predictable choices, which reinforce the outcomes. A closed circuit running on inherited assumptions. You are trying to exit a loop that has been running for generations. That is not self-improvement. That is structural intervention. And it requires more than motivation. It requires understanding the machine well enough to move through it differently, to use its own mechanics against the outcome it was producing. You're in your 30s now. The account balances are different. The decisions are different. The way you talk about money with your younger siblings, careful, practical, never preachy, is passing something forward that nobody passed to you. On a Sunday you call your mother. There's a bill she mentions without quite saying it's a problem. You handle it. You don't make it a moment. You just handle it. That exchange, quiet, unremarkable, is the exact thing you were building toward without ever having the words for it. There is nothing triumphant about where you are. No finish line. No arrival. Just a shifted baseline. A move starting point for whoever comes after you. The first economy still needs workers. The second economy still rewards structure over effort. The gap between them is still widening. The loop is still running for most people inside it. You did not fix the system. You learned to navigate it differently. That's all this ever was. Somewhere right now, a kid is sitting in a house where the heat gets turned down at night. Watching the fridge. Watching the numbers not add up. Watching parents come home tired in that specific way, not dramatic, just worn. Something is forming inside them. Not ambition exactly. Something quieter. More specific. A decision that feels final even before they understand what it will cost. They don't know yet about the two economies. They don't know about the model they've inherited or what it will take to replace it. They don't know that the loneliest part isn't the money, it's the room that stops recognizing you. They don't know that someone already walked this. That someone already paid the cost of not knowing. That the exit exists. The loop continues. But so does the way out.